Hello and welcome to this David-like videocast on a very warm and humid day on the Isle of Wight. Now, if I said the word scientist to most people, they would conjure up an image of someone highly intelligent, who knew what they were talking about, very clever. And do those type of scientists exist? Well, of course they do. But are all scientists like that? You're having a laugh. And you know, just as we are seeing government narratives and official narratives of all kinds being promoted by the mainstream media, by your Facebooks and Googles and YouTubes and so on, and the suppression and often silencing of alternatives to that narrative, so exactly the same is going on in what we call science. What science should be is the independent, non-biased, fact-driven pursuit of greater understanding. But while there is some of that among independent scientists, the mainstream of science, what I call song sheet science, or scientific orthodoxy, as it's called, it doesn't work like that. What happens is a belief system is created, often on a group of assumptions unproven, and through constant repetition, those assumptions become this is how it is, what scientists know. And song sheet science then insists, not least by controlling the funding and controlling what is published, what is promoted and what isn't, it pushes this scientific orthodoxy based on assumptions, not evidence, and suppresses and silences those who oppose it. So you get situations where people say, well, scientists know. And when you kind of look a bit deeper, you find that a group of song sheet, orthodoxy worshipping scientists have decided this is how it is, and decided this is what they know, and everyone else who has another opinion that is challenging that never gets heard. And this is pushing an agenda of public perception about reality, about medicine, about climate, all of it, not on the basis of evidence, but on the basis of constant repetition. And you see the same in medicine, of course, which is a branch of science, where there is an orthodoxy, this is how it is, what we know is, and then to the point sometimes, maybe more than sometimes, of getting struck off for having a different view, even if you can support it with evidence. Anyone challenging the medical orthodoxy and how people should be treated and what causes this and what causes that is again silenced. So leaving the orthodoxy of everyone knows that to run unchallenged through the public mind. And of course, what also happens is politicians take their perception, thus their legislation, from what scientific song sheet orthodoxy claims to know and what medical orthodoxy claims to know. So do journalists who report the world from the perspective that this orthodoxy is true, when it's overwhelmingly based on assumptions, not fact. And so you get this group think, where something is perceived to be true when it patently isn't when you look at the evidence. And this has fundamental effects on people's health and how they're treated and whether they recover, on the way society is being changed by the assumptions, I would say hoax, of climate change caused by human activity, it is claimed. And when you look at scientists as a group, they must know what they're doing, then we get in real trouble. When you look at doctors, they're doctors, they must know what they're doing, then we're in real trouble. Because some of them will know some of what they're doing, and many of them will be clueless about what they're doing. You know, it's ironic that we get our information, in the mainstream anyway, from scientists, doctors, journalists, politicians, when in my own personal experience, some of the most clueless, inane people I've ever met have been politicians, journalists, scientists, doctors, and you can throw in also into this mix academics. And yet they're the people that are supposed to be informing us about the world. Now, I'm not saying all people in those groups are clueless. I'm saying a goodly number are, and the song sheet singers are not independent scientists and doctors and academics independently investigating situations and subjects on the basis of facts. They are singing from the song sheet of orthodoxy. They are not scientific discoverers and seekers of truth. They are repeaters of the official version of truth. And this is something that is becoming more and more in your face, obvious, the longer the days pass now, as this control of the narrative across the great spectrum of human society is increasingly controlled by emphasizing one version of events and absolutely suppressing anything that challenges it. So let's have a look here at the definition of science. It's knowledge, knowing, expertness, what is known to know. Well, what is known, what is assumed to be known, should be the definition of song sheet science. It comes from the Latin scientia, meaning knowledge, and the definition of knowledge is a sum total of what is known, the body of truth, information, and principles acquired by humankind. Knowledge is truth. No, it's not necessarily. How much has been assumed to be knowledge, assumed to be known throughout human history, that subsequently was shown to be a load of old crap? Do you know, until the 1920s, scientists assumed that there was one galaxy in the universe. The latest estimates are as high as 2 trillion galaxies in the universe. And so when we hear scientists saying, everybody knows that, we know that, then we should find some salt, take a little pinch of it, and let it go. And of course, what also happens with this orthodoxy is that's what gets in the textbooks. And so children and young people, they go through the school and college system, reading in the textbooks and being judged in examinations on the basis of the textbooks being true, And what the textbooks are made up of is scientific orthodoxy, the song sheet, some of which may be valid, much of which will not be. And I've been reading a book this week with this title, Low Cholesterol Leads to an Early Death. What? No, high cholesterol's bad for you. I read it in the paper, saw it on the telly, heard this scientist saying, this doctor. I went to the doctor, he said, your cholesterol's too high. You've got to get it down, take statins. That can't be true. Well, this is a book which includes the evidence from 101 scientific papers and could have included many, many more that say the very opposite. This is usually the case. The very opposite of what we're told about cholesterol and its dangers is the case, and not what the song sheet is parroting to us. Now, the themes in this book were not new to me, because a great friend of mine, Mike Lambert, at the Shen Clinic just down the road from where I live, was telling me about this years and years ago, that this whole cholesterol, fat is bad for you mantra was actually an inversion of the truth. And it's just one or two of these papers, these mainstream scientific papers that are included in this book. Low cholesterol is associated with increased death rates in 35 to 74-year-olds. Study of 482,472 men aged 30 to 65 shows that low cholesterol increases the mortality rate by 35% in men. High cholesterol, well, that's bad for you. Well, high cholesterol results in a 13% lower death rate compared to low cholesterol in 35 to 64-year-olds. Higher cholesterol levels associated with lower death rates in 350,977 men. And in people aged 20 and over, low cholesterol is correlated with an increase in death rates. And again, so many things like carbon dioxide are being demonized as the villain when actually they're essential to life. And the book lists here the roles that cholesterol plays. You know, this cholesterol that we've got to lower. Oh, cholesterol, it'll kill us. Cholesterol is necessary for normal embryonic development and has important functions both before and after birth. It is a structural component of cell membranes. About 40 to 60% of the brain is cholesterol. And that's why some of these scientific studies and papers have made a correlation between low cholesterol and psychological problems, including an increased rate of suicide, because of its effect on the way the brain functions if cholesterol gets too low. Cholesterol is a major component of the protective substance covering nerve cells. It plays a major role in the development, function, and stability of synapses, the connections between nerve cells. And it plays a role, a rather important one, in the production of vitamin D, certain hormones, and bile acids. Now, one of the key things that cholesterol does is it synthesizes sunlight into vitamin D. So if you have low cholesterol, and this, according to these studies, applies to what the mainstream call good and bad cholesterol. If you have low cholesterol, you don't synthesize, absorb vitamin D from the sun with the same level of efficiency and volume. And low levels of vitamin D play out across a long list of health consequences that come from that. It also plays a role, cholesterol, in a healthy and strong immune system. It is needed to produce vital hormones, including testosterone and estrogen. I did a videocast some weeks ago about the falling levels of testosterone in men. Cholesterol is the precursor to the adrenal hormones, cortisol and others. It is essential for the production of bile acids that are vital for the absorption of certain minerals and fat-soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K, and cholesterol helps to repair damaged arteries. So in summary, the book found from these papers that clinical benefits of cholesterol therapy, increasing cholesterol, were seen in all patients in one study, irrespective of their age, at the onset of treatment and the severity of the cholesterol defect. So, the review of these papers, the book says, demonstrates the following. Low cholesterol levels are associated with a shorter life. Low levels of both what are called good and bad cholesterol are linked to a shorter lifespan. High cholesterol does not cause heart disease. Low cholesterol leads to illness and death in many diseases and conditions. Statin drugs, which make an absolute fortune for the big pharma cartel, and are being given to perfectly healthy people in increasing numbers to get their cholesterol down. Statins, some of these studies found, and low-fat diets may lead to higher death rates. You do surprise me. Saturated fat gives protection from heart disease, and cholesterol is an essential substance needed for a long, healthy life. And the book quotes some people who go to doctors, and the doctor says, "Oh, your health's not very good. Oh, but congratulations, you've got low cholesterol." Oh my God. And the statins industry is now worth $20 billion, or was in 2017, be more now because it's growing year on year. And despite all of that, I was passing the pharmacy area of a supermarket this week and found this: managing your cholesterol and ways to keep it down by selling you some margarine or something. And so you see again and again that when you look at evidence that you would normally not hear about, for reasons I've described, that the very opposite of what we're told is the case across a great swathe of scientific, so-called, and medical subjects. Now, another book I've been reading, almost finished it now, is called The Politically Incorrect Guide to Climate Change. See what I can do there with the sun coming through the window, by Mark Morano. Now, once again, the themes were not new to me because I've been researching this myself for years and years and years. But what this book is a brilliant pull together, and it's heaving with quotes from scientists and evidence to show that what we are called or told to believe in human-caused climate change, we're all going to die, is a nonsense, a hoax, and a lie that's driven not by science, not by fact, but by a political agenda, which is what I've been saying all these years. It's about transforming human society, justified by we must save the planet. And the evidence in here, not just of the fact that what is claimed to be happening is not happening, but of the way the whole hoax has been fixed and manipulated, is shocking when you see it all between the covers of a single book. Now, have a look at this graph. This is a graph of greenhouse gases, which are, it is said, holding heat in and therefore warming the planet. Now, the one on the left, you would think, given the hysteria, would be carbon dioxide, CO2. It's not. Right up into the 90% of greenhouse gases are water vapor and clouds. What are we going to do? Ban condensation? And then you look next to it at the 0.117% of greenhouse gases, and you see CO2, this demonized basic necessity for life, for goodness sake. Oh no, it's a toxin. Well, try living without it, mate. And much, if not most actually, of that 0.117% of carbon dioxide in greenhouse gases is naturally occurring and is not caused by humans. Oh, it's the demon. Just quote here from this book. A guy actually that I quoted myself in books and talks. Former NASA scientist Les Woodcock now laughs, the book says, at man-made climate change claims. Woodcock, Professor Emeritus of Chemical Thermodynamics at the University of Manchester, is a former NASA researcher. Woodcock, who has published more than 70 journal papers, declared there had been professional misconduct by government advisors around the world when it comes to man-made climate change claims. He says the theory of man-made climate change is an unsubstantiated hypothesis. Assumptions, here we go. Water is a much more powerful greenhouse gas, and there are 20 times more of it in our atmosphere, around 1% of the atmosphere, whereas CO2 is only 0.04%. Carbon dioxide, he says, has been made out to be some kind of toxic gas. But the truth is, it's the gas of life. Of course it is. We breathe it out, plants breathe it in, and the green lobby has created a do-good industry, and it becomes a way of life, like a religion. And that's what it's become. That's what science is, Songsheet science. It's a religion. It's a religion some people call scientism. And it works exactly the same way as religion. Your religious belief system is scientific orthodoxy. And your holy books are the orthodoxy books on the various subjects. And anyone who deviates from the orthodoxy of the scientism religion is a blasphemer and must be silenced. It's called science, by the way. The temperature Woodcock says of the Earth, has been going up and down for millions of years. If there are extremes, it's nothing to do with carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. It's not permanent, and it's not caused by us. Global warming, he says, is nonsense. If you talk to real scientists who have no political interest, really independent scientists, in other words, they will tell you there is nothing in global warming. It's an industry which creates vast amounts of money for some people. And that's another way that it works, certainly the way that the so-called climate change hoax has been played out. All your funding, and it's colossal worldwide now, goes to those that will sing from the song sheet. Oh yeah, we're all going to die. And of course, funding doesn't go to those who are challenging it, and the song sheeters are promoted in the scientific journals and all that stuff, and others are excluded from them who are saying something different. And this is how it works. Very, very simple. So we have a situation where the data on which the climate change hoax, which was changed to climate change from global warming when temperatures stopped going up, by the way. The data is based on often fraudulent and manipulated claims to make it look like this global warming climate change is happening, when it's not. One of the great promoters of all this, of course, has been the BBC, that decided at one point that the science is settled, so they have no need to give an alternative opinion to it. But we've had examples of what have been called ClimateGate, when emails have come out between these song sheeters showing that they were manipulating the data to make it look like something it wasn't. So we have had the dismissal and removal from the climate history record of something called the medieval warm period, when temperatures were warmer than they are now. This started, I think, about 1,000 years ago, about 800 AD to 1400 AD, this medieval warm period. What caused it all those centuries ago? Turbocharged handcarts, souped up hose. We had other warm periods between, so they say, between 600 and 800 million years ago. What the hell caused it then? And they stay quiet about something called the Little Ice Age, which started around 1400, went through to the 19th century, when at its peak, the Thames used to freeze over in the winter. And they used to have ice fairs on the Thames because the ice was so thick. And many of the temperatures that they're comparing today's with, it's the biggest since, are being compared with temperatures as we were coming out of the Little Ice Age, which makes the comparison nonsense. But it's not whether it's nonsense or not, it's whether it sells the song sheet or not. So we have hundreds of factors involved in climate and changing climate, affecting climate. And one of them, don't tell anybody, is the sun. Have you noticed when the sun comes out, it gets warm? I have. I've noticed that a few times in my life. When have you ever heard these climate change cultists, because that's what they are, talk about the sun in terms of temperature? And yet, at the very most extreme point of the Little Ice Age, when temperatures were incredibly cold, it was also corresponding with something called the Maunder minimum, which was a point of low, almost non-existent sunspot activity on the sun, which indicates solar activity and the power of the energetic projections, if you like, from the sun, which kind of affect how warm it is here. It's beyond belief how people can call themselves scientists and then act like this, not to pursue knowledge, but to pursue a political agenda. There's another book I've just read recently, When Harry Became Sally. Very good book. What it's doing is exposing the manipulation of facts, not least medical, genetic facts, to push this great explosion of transgenderism. And what you see in this book, you see in the other two, where there is an agenda, there is an orthodoxy, this is how it is, this is what must happen as a result of this is how it is. And then anyone that challenges that this is how it is ridiculed, condemned, abused, and in many occasions, they lose their job. This is how it works. And, you know, we need to remember that the vast majority of scientists aren't independently seeking to greater understanding of reality and so on. They're working for universities and corporations, people like Monsanto and the big pharma cartel, to discover things that will make money for the corporations and attract funding, research funding, for the universities and so on. They are investigating not the great mysteries of life, but how to develop more chemical cocktails to put in your food and drink. How many more chemical concoctions they can give fancy names to and sell as drugs on the television. This is what they're doing. More concoctions of poisons and toxins that can be poured onto the land and end up in our food. That's what the great majority of scientists are doing. And in terms of the global warming scientists, coming up with evidence, in quotes, to support a political agenda, which is unraveling all the time. And that's the point. You know, we've got to stop treating these scientists and doctors and all these other people with labels as gods, as if they know what they're doing. Some do. Some have the integrity, the humility to independently investigate things to see what they can independently uncover with no agenda. And also the humility comes in knowing that whatever we know, it's a fraction of what there is to know. So maybe what we assume is the way things are might not be. But what you get is people like this. This is an article about a guy called Neil deGrasse Tyson, one of these celebrity scientists in the United States. Never seen a mirror he doesn't worship, from what I've observed of him anyway. And the headline says, Neil deGrasse Tyson demands science totalitarianism across America says anyone who disagrees with him is automatically anti-science, anti-agenda, songsheet science. And the article says perhaps the world's biggest asshat, whatever one of those is, with a superiority complex in all things science, Neil deGrasse Tyson is on a mission to eradicate anti-intellectualism from the US, that is, any belief that deviates from what he personally holds to be true about the world. This is how songsheet science works. In a recent video he released for Earth Day, Tyson bemoaned the existence of science deniers. That's the term. You're a Holocaust denier becomes you're a climate change denier, so link the two deniers, and a science denier, and it's usually spoken by a science denier. He bemoaned the existence of science deniers, whom he says represent a threat to our informed democracy, i.e. believing what he thinks. And he called instead for a scientific dictatorship in which all opposing viewpoints are silenced. And we really do have to stop believing people just because they're scientists and use our own common sense to break down what they're claiming on the basis of the evidence. And this is a guy, a Mises Institute writer called Jonathan Newman, who said in this deGrasse Tyson article, "We may not all be equipped with a laboratory, but we are all equipped with reason, experience, preferences, common sense, some more than others." He says, "Gut instincts, some ideas about what is morally right and what is morally wrong, and our own areas of expertise about the valid scrutiny of science by members of the general public." He's talking about. "Surely," he said, "these are not meaningless when it comes to judging the claims of a politically connected technocratic elite and their policy recommendations." Spot on. Like I say, we've got to stop treating scientists and doctors and all these other people as gods and the arbiters of truth just because they're called doctors and scientists. The history is that they've got so much vastly wrong at a time when they assumed it was right and they knew what they were talking about. Well, it's been shown again and again and again that wasn't true. And we need to remember that. We also need to remember that you don't need a scientific mind to understand reality. You need an open one that is always open to other possibilities. Once you close your mind, and this is what songsheet science does and songsheet medicine, once you close your mind to other possibilities, what you create is a round and round and round, like an eddy in the river, which is just going round and round and round, confirming the known or what is assumed to be known. And anyone who wants to break out of the eddy and go on into greater knowledge, they are ridiculed, dismissed, condemned, or sacked. We need to start looking at people as individuals. Not is he or she a scientist or a doctor, but are they any bloody good? Because from the bottom up, this transformation has got to take place in all levels of society and all across the spectrum of subjects. And in terms of what I'm talking about today, science and medicine, it has to come from the bottom up, that we stop or start challenging these assumptions and these claims of how things are, and stop believing them just because someone's called a scientist or a doctor. It has to come from the bottom up, because clearly, after all this time, it's never going to come from the top down.